It's 2024. The world is at a crossroads, facing unprecedented challenges that are reshaping our daily lives and the future of our planet. The world is dealing with big problems like climate change, a shaky economy, and the ever-present threat of social unrest. Climate change protests are becoming more frequent, supermarket shelves are often empty, and the stock market is more volatile than ever. The effects of a pandemic still linger, with people wearing masks in crowded cities, hospital wards filled to capacity, and memories of lockdowns fresh in everyone's minds. But in the middle of all this, a shocking story comes out of Brazil. A story that cuts through the noise and demands our attention. It shows the bad side of globalization and how much we want cheap things, even if it hurts people. Factories with Made in China labels, crowded markets, and bustling ports are all part of this complex web. In Camaçari, Bahia, a busy industrial city, there's a scandal at a factory being built by BYD, a big Chinese company that makes electric vehicles. This city, known for its industrial prowess, is now at the center of a human rights controversy. They found over 160 Chinese workers in terrible conditions, hidden from the world and too scared to speak up. These workers were living in crowded dormitories with poor living conditions that were captured on hidden cameras. These workers were promised a better life, but they ended up in a nightmare. They boarded planes with hope in their eyes, only to arrive at a place that was far from what they had been promised. They were treated like slaves, forced to work long hours under harsh conditions with strict supervisors constantly watching over them. This story shocked Brazil and other countries, making people ask important questions about how companies act, workers' rights, and what happens when big companies work in developing countries. News conferences were held, protests erupted outside factories, and the story gained international attention. It reminds us that making money should never come before treating people with dignity and respect. In the end, the true measure of success is not just in profits, but in how we treat those who help us achieve them. The world is watching, and everyone wants justice. As this story continues to unfold, it serves as a powerful reminder that we must hold companies accountable and ensure that human rights are upheld, no matter where in the world we are. Imagine traveling far from home, hoping for a better life for you and your family. You leave behind everything familiar, your home, your friends, and even your language, all in search of new opportunities. The journey is long and filled with uncertainty, but you hold on to the hope that this new land will offer you a chance to build a better future. You arrive in a new country, excited but also nervous, only to have your dreams crushed. The initial excitement of stepping onto foreign soil quickly fades as reality sets in. The promises of good jobs and fair treatment turn out to be empty words. Instead of the opportunities you were promised, you find yourself trapped in a nightmare. That's what happened to the Chinese workers at the BYD factory in Brazil. These workers, lured by the promise of decent wages and better living conditions, left their homes and families behind. They traveled thousands of miles, filled with hope and determination, only to find themselves in a dire situation. These workers, many of whom left their families behind, had to work incredibly long hours, often 7 days a week with almost no rest. The factory floor became their new home, a place where they toiled endlessly, their bodies and spirits worn down by the relentless demands of their jobs. The promise of a better life seemed like a cruel joke as they labored day in and day out, with no end in sight. They were packed into crowded and dirty living spaces with barely enough room to breathe. The dormitories were a far cry from the comfortable accommodations they had been promised. Instead, they found themselves living in squalor, sharing cramped quarters with many others, with little privacy or comfort. The conditions were deplorable, adding to their sense of despair and hopelessness. The workers said they didn't have enough clean water, toilets, or food. Basic necessities that many take for granted were in short supply. The lack of clean water made it difficult to maintain hygiene, and the broken toilets added to the unsanitary conditions. Food was often insufficient, leaving the workers hungry and malnourished. These harsh living conditions took a toll on their health and well-being. Their passports, the only way for them to go back home, were taken away when they arrived, leaving them helpless and easy to take advantage of. Without their passports, they were effectively trapped, unable to leave or seek help. This act of confiscating their documents was a deliberate move to control and exploit them, stripping them of their freedom and autonomy. To make things even worse, a big part of their already low wages was taken away for living expenses and other questionable charges. The workers found themselves in a vicious cycle of debt and exploitation, Despite their hard work, they were left with barely enough money to survive. The deductions for living expenses were often inflated and unjustified, further deepening their financial struggles. If they complained or tried to escape, they were threatened with violence and more money taken away. The fear of retribution kept them silent and compliant. The threats of violence were real and ever-present, creating an atmosphere of fear and intimidation. Any attempt to escape or speak out was met with harsh consequences, leaving the workers feeling trapped and powerless. This isn't just a story about workers being treated badly, it's a scary story about human trafficking and forced labor. The exploitation of these workers goes beyond poor working conditions and low wages. It is a grave violation of human rights, a modern-day form of slavery. The Workers Ordeal is a stark reminder of the dark side of globalization and the urgent need for stronger protections for vulnerable workers around the world. When the news of this scandal came out, everyone wanted to know what BYD would do. The company, which has built a reputation for innovation and sustainability, was suddenly under the microscope. People were glued to their screens waiting for the next update. Social media was abuzz with speculation and outrage. The question on everyone's mind was simple: how would BYD handle this crisis? This big company, known for its electric vehicles and green energy, had to respond to the accusations of treating workers like slaves. The allegations were shocking, especially for a company that prides itself on ethical practices and sustainability. BYD's image as a leader in green technology was at stake. The public wanted answers, and they wanted them fast. The pressure was mounting, and the company's next move would be crucial. In a carefully written statement, BYD said it was committed to following labor laws and acting ethically. The statement emphasized the company's dedication to human rights and fair labor practices. It was clear that BYD was trying to distance itself from the scandal. The company assured the public that it would conduct a thorough investigation and take appropriate action. But was this enough to quell the growing discontent? The company quickly ended its contract with Xinjiang Construction Brazil, the contractor in charge of the site, trying to separate itself from the problem. This move was seen as an attempt to show that BYD was taking the issue seriously. By cutting ties with the contractor, BYD hoped to demonstrate its commitment to ethical practices. However, some critics argued that this was merely a symbolic gesture and did not address the root of the problem. BYD also promised to move the affected workers to better places and make sure they were taken care of. The company outlined plans to improve living conditions and provide additional support for the workers. This included new housing, better facilities, and access to health care. BYD wanted to show that it was committed to the well-being of its employees. But was this enough to restore public trust? However, some people wondered if BYD was really sorry or just trying to protect its image. Skeptics questioned the sincerity of the company's actions. Was BYD genuinely committed to making things right, or was it simply trying to save face? The public was divided, and the debate raged on. Some believed that BYD's efforts were a step in the right direction, while others saw them as too little, too late. Critics said that BYD, as the main company, should have been more careful and made sure workers were treated fairly. They argued that BYD had a responsibility to oversee its contractors and ensure that labor standards were upheld. The scandal highlighted the need for greater transparency and accountability in the industry. It also raised questions about the true cost of rapid expansion and the sacrifices made along the way. This situation made people question the true cost of BYD's rapid global growth and its commitment to social responsibility. As the company continued to expand, it faced increasing scrutiny over its labor practices and ethical standards. The scandal served as a wake-up call, reminding everyone that growth should not come at the expense of human rights. BYD's response to this crisis would shape its future and determine whether it could regain the trust of the public. Caught in the middle of this international scandal was Xinjiang Construction Brazil, the contractor hired by BYD to manage the workers. The company, facing serious accusations of human rights abuses, strongly denied doing anything wrong. Xinjiang Construction Brazil claimed that the accusations of slave-like conditions were exaggerated and came from cultural misunderstandings. The company said that the workers' living arrangements, while simple, met Brazilian legal standards. They said the long working hours were necessary for the construction project and claimed that workers were paid for overtime. As for the passports being taken away, Xinjiang Construction Brazil insisted that this was normal in the construction industry to keep workers' documents safe. However, many people didn't believe the company's defense, seeing it as a desperate attempt to avoid responsibility for exploiting vulnerable workers. The Brazilian government, already dealing with a history of worker exploitation, acted quickly to address the BYD factory scandal. Determined to show its commitment to protecting workers, Brazil started a full investigation. The Bahia State Labor Prosecutor's Office, along with other authorities, went to the BYD factory demanding answers and seeking justice for the exploited workers. All work at the factory was immediately stopped, sending a clear message that such blatant disregard for labor laws would not be tolerated. The Brazilian government also took the unusual step of suspending temporary work visas for BYD, significantly impacting the company's operations in the country. This strong action sent a powerful message to multinational corporations in Brazil that they could no longer act without consequences, and that exploiting workers would have serious repercussions.
So hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and let's turn the page on a new adventure together. Get ready to experience books like never before, only on VBook 360. Like, comment, and share to support the channel and keep the video magic alive. Thank you for stopping by. And remember, every video has a story, and every story deserves to be shared. See you in the next video.